Joining us now, the anchor of CNN's Early Start, Laura Jarrett, CNN political commentator and New York Magazine columnist Errol Lewis, and CNN political analyst and Washington Post columnist Josh Rogin. So some deliverables, Josh, some disagreements as well. What do you think we're going to be hearing from the president?
Right. I think it's been a really good week for NATO, good week for Finland, good week for Sweden. Ukraine, not so much. And I think what the president's going to do is he's going to focus on the plus side. NATO is stronger. Russia doesn't like that. You know, the NATO countries are committed to the fight. He's not going to want to talk about the negative side, which is the fact that there's no new sanctions on Russia. They couldn't agree to it, not even at the G7. Zelensky is asking for heavy weapons, the long-range artillery. They're still not giving it to him. And also, winter is coming. And when the energy crisis meets that winter, all these European countries are going to change their calculations. There's no plan for that. How do we break the siege of Odessa and get the grain out so that there's not a food crisis to add to all of this other stuff? So some good points, some bad points. Biden's going to focus on the good points. Hopefully the reporters will press him for answers on the rest.
Errol, it's a news conference from a president who doesn't give a lot of news conferences at a time when his approval rating, the average, is about 38%. What kind of image does he need to project?
He needs to project the image of as the leader of the free world, something that really he has not been able to do, but is one of his stronger points. It's one of the areas where he can claim some successes. I mean, the fact that you do now have an expansion of NATO on the table, the fact that they even sort of broadened their lens to a certain extent and unmistakably are sending messages to China about this is sort of the armed democracies. This is the strong arm of democracy with the president sort of leading it. There couldn't be a greater contrast with what we saw as America first, or some would have said America alone during the Trump years. And so he gets to relive some of the stronger points. It also partly makes up for the debacle of the withdrawal of troops from Afghanistan, which really started the slide of his popularity. So I think he's going to sort of maybe try and turn things around and roll back the clock to when his approval ratings were quite a bit higher than they are right now.
I think his trip has certainly been overshadowed by what has happened with Roe v. Wade and the fallout from that. I bet there's a lot of Americans who don't even know that Biden is in Madrid, right? They don't. So what does he need to say? What does he need to speak to?
Well, I think he's going to have to at least address that as the elephant in the room. I'm sure reporters are going to ask him a lot about it. And I think he needs to say, here's the game plan. I mean, we know from our reporting, CNN and Kevin Liptak has been doing great reporting about sort of they had this whole thing predicted because we saw the draft opinion. And so they knew Roe was likely to fall. So now what? What's the plan? I mean, the Democrats in Congress, Elizabeth Warren, has been quite outspoken about a lot of suggestions, making abortion services available on federal lands. And the White House has been pushing back on some of those things. All right, so then what is the plan? And I would ask him if I was there, are you prepared to blow up the filibuster or make some change, at least in a limited way, to the filibuster to protect abortion rights the way you were for voting rights?
Brianna brings up a good point. I mean, Roe versus Wade overshadowed this trip. So has the January 6th committee in the hearings. Can we role play for a second here? You play the president, I'll play a reporter in the room. Mr. President,
Mr. Berman,
Mr.
nice
President,
to see you again.
The Attorney General, Eric Garland, based on what has been heard by the January 6th committee, should DOJ be investigating Donald Trump?
Well, as you know, that is up to the Attorney General. I put him there. I mean, he's got to deflect in a way that makes it clear that he defers to Merrick Garland, that this is important for history, that he wants to see some accountability. But he's been very clear that he wants the DOJ to operate independently because he knows what has happened in the Trump administration. At the same time, he doesn't want to look sort of tone deaf, right? America has been hooked on these hearings and all of the revelations. And in fact, I think the reporting was that he was going to watch the hearings and that he was enthused about what was going to come out. Whether, in fact, he's been following all the developments while he's been abroad, he's been a little bit busy. But I think he's going to deflect to Merrick Garland and not weigh in on whether the president is going to be indicted or investigated.
What do you think, Errol?
I think on the question of Roe versus Wade and the response, where he is getting quite a lot of political criticism, he can, if he wishes to, point to the fact that he's appointed more judges to the federal bench than any president since Kennedy in the first year. So he got 80 nominations moved. He got 42 of them approved. He's got Ketanji Brown Jackson, who's going to be sort of, sworn in. I mean, that he can say, look, we are responding. We don't have to blow up the filibuster. We don't have to expand the size of the court or somehow put term limits in place. I'm doing what I can do, and I'm doing it better than most of the presidents, before me. That's a pretty good place to start. I think also, of course, he's got a theme that's just waiting there for him, of like a sort of a slow pitch over the plate to hit out of the park and say, I defend democracy abroad and I defend democracy at home. That's what we do. That's what presidents do.
The other side of that coin is that when we have democratic dysfunction at home, it undermines our leadership on the world stage, makes us look like we don't know what we're doing, and feeds the propaganda of our enemies who say that democracy is too messy and authoritarianism is better. So when Europeans look back to the Trump administration, they see that America treated Europe like garbage, and they look at what's going on now. They say, oh, that could come back in a year or 3 years. So, Biden is trying to say America's back as a leader of democracies, but he can't promise that that lasts any longer than his administration.
That's so interesting, because I was going to ask you, Josh, how does, I guess we're talking about Europe here, how does Europe at this point look at President Biden? And is it similar or different than how Ukraine, which is part of Europe, look at President Biden?
Right. I mean, they're behind him to a point, but they're suffering from the same thing he's suffering from, high gas prices and inflation. And they know that Putin will take more pain than their populations will. So they want an end game for this. They want to know, how do we get out of this without losing power? And Biden doesn't have an answer for that. So they're still behind him. But I'm telling you that Zelensky is saying the same thing. We've got months, not years. Time is not on Ukraine's side. It's not on Europe's side. Time is on the side of the dictators who are willing to subject their people to this kind of suffering forever. So Biden's he's got a timeline and he's got to act fast. And I don't see what those solutions are. And I'm sure that will be a big part of the press conference today. How do you solve inflation? How do you solve the food crisis? How do you get gas prices down? Well, one way is to win the war against Putin. Some people would say, give Zelensky the weapons he needs to win the war. If you're not willing to do that, and we're getting in for the long slog, well, eventually the Europeans are going to jump off ship because they have to respond to their politics just like everybody else.
Because winter is coming.
Exactly.
Thank you,
As
Ned
you
Stark.
put it, right? I know, well, that's exactly what we thought, of course. But if winter is coming, and that is the question here, and this will also speak to American leadership, the leadership of Joe Biden, who is willing to go further? Vladimir Putin with the pain, or Joe Biden and Europe with the pain? What do you say?
I say the Ukrainians have the most will of all. They're fighting for their homes, their families, their lives. They're not going to stop. The least we can do, in my opinion, is give them the weapons that they're asking for. Right now, we're playing this game of not escalating. So we're giving them just enough weapons to fight to a tie. And that means that the war could go on forever. So we can either give them the weapons that they need to win this year, or we can settle in for a really, really long slog. So in the end, I think the Ukrainians have the most will of all. But they can't do it without our support. They need more of it. They need it fast.
Josh, thank you so much. Errol, Laura, we do appreciate it.
Madam President.
That was lovely.
She's good. She's
vote.
good at it.
You stole that from Ellie Honig.
You know.
But it's because it worked. Just to